Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, waders, aiders, and commodity traders, welcome along to the Joe Spivey YouTube channel where we discuss books and little else. You join me on a bracing Sunday morning here in northern England. I've been for my morning walk and have been stirred by the frost and the cold, and also a little perturbed and put out by the modern social contagion known otherwise as Christmas, which seems to have arrived here in Britain. Walking down, my statistician at my side delightfully informed me that anywhere between 75 and 80% of all households we walked past had all of the ostentatious Christmas trees, all of the physical renditions of Santa Claus, lights, presents, all sorts of icicles, flashing mirage and aureoles of all sorts. And yet we are, I think, north of 30 days away from the big day. And so things are only going to get worse. Trees will be bought, reindeers commandeered, that type of thing. You join me once more, as ever, in the Virgin's Emporium. This is the bunker to which Commodore Spivey, 8th Baron Spivey of Holderness, so often retreats to both ponder and plot the collective downfall of Western Europe. It is a bizarre miscegenation of militaria and Soviet memorabilia, obsolete Soviet technology. We have, first of all, as I'm so fond of showing you, little old soldiers that he likes to paint and show off, and heaven forbid often sell. And then he also has little things such as these. This can only be a Geiger counter garnered from Pripyat in 1989, and of course we have also the famous throat slitter of Lavrenti Beria. This has to be, I mean, if we were to examine this, this would have all the fingerprints of many, many KGB members over it. I don't know what on earth he must use it for, but just to think, one little swipe and it would all be over for some poor enemy of the state, some poor soul. But anyway, I'm rabbiting on. You join me for my December TBR. It is a well-known fact that my November TBR was an excellent video. It went down very well. Comments about what I was going to read all would be excellent. And before long, that list went to the dogs, ladies and gents, because I foolishly acquired more books throughout the month of November and failed to... I essentially jettisoned probably about 50% of everything that was in that TBR. And so I'm going to try and stick to my guns, but I am also informing you that this TBR is very, very mutable. So hopefully I can show you some things that I will get to, and then some things that will sadly miss the boat. So the first one that we are going to interrogate is Virginia Woolf's Orlando. This was in one of my book hauls previously. I got it secondhand, but rather cheap. And the jury is out on my verdict of Woolf. Her non-fiction is excellent. Her book reviews, as I continually adore, they're excellent. But the fiction has never been something which I've found much of an affinity with. To the Lighthouse and Mrs. Dalloway, I know she's probably written 17 more novels that I just haven't got to because I'm an ignorant pig. But yeah, Mrs. Dalloway and To the Lighthouse, one of which was taught at university, Mrs. Dalloway, because it's, some sort of a totemic example of the modernist movement, whatever the hell that means. Didn't find that too good. To the Lighthouse was meh, fair enough, give or take. But yes, this is Orlando. Orlando lives through 4 centuries in many disguises. He is page to Queen Elizabeth I, beau of the court of King James, ambassador to the pompous palaces of Constantinople. There he undergoes a miraculous transformation. So this will be, I think this is going to be frightfully modern. I think it's going to talk about gender fluidity and things of that nature, hopefully in a mature and non-ideological way. That would be jolly good, and something that I've come to expect of Miss Woolf. Then we have Flaubert's, if I can just get that right, Madame Bovary. This is a Penguin Popular Classics. I have had this for ever and ever, and it has sat there and isn't particularly long, or I don't think particularly complex, and so I don't know why quite it is. I've just been putting it off, but I haven't quite got to it. I did read Sentimental Education, which was published, I think, probably about 12 or 15 years after this, which I found pretty good. It deals with I think a similar sort of plot rudiment. So you've got, I think, an older woman that's wants to throw caution to the wind, and a young, idealistic, artistic, slightly charismatic young male. Don't know why the hell I would have an affiliation with such a plot, but yeah, I think this deals with roughly similar things. Lots of people hail it as a mastery of stylistic exploration, and people go on about how perfect the language is. So yeah, sentiment education I got from that, but that's the only thing I've read from Mr. Flaubert. So I'm looking forward to diving into this. This is the one that everybody knows about. Emma leaves her father to marry Charles Bovary, an insignificant local doctor, and to live among the bourgeoisie of Yonville. An ardent devourer of sentimental novels, Emma fills her head with fantastic notions of gallantry and high romance, which she soon finds lacking in her dull husband. Disillusioned and frustrated, she finds solace in a tempestuous love affair with the local squire, naively imagining that he will fulfil her desires. Torn between her licentiousness and piety, her voracious passion for spending, and her constant need for love, Emma Bovary has become one of the greatest and least conventional heroines of fiction. And I presume that is her there on her chaise lounge, looking all seductive. But yes, I'm very much looking forward to that. Again, nothing large, nice and condensed and manageable. Next up, we have Martin Amis's The Information. This is a string of stuff published by Vintage, of which I have probably 5 or 6. And this deals with the conflict, or sort of kind and genial conflict between a writer whom we are meant to assume writes commercially, somebody who writes very much with a market in mind, and somebody that modulates their writing so as to appeal to the greatest available number of people, against what is commonly recognised as a sort of muse-driven, again quite idealistic, and some would say quixotically derived writer who writes from the soul and doesn't care how many copies he shifts, how much copy he shifts, and deals with the dichotomies and interplay between those two things. It's part of Amis's touted London trilogy, although I don't ever think he intended it to be a trilogy. It's just 3 separate novels that his acolytes, including me sometimes, have haphazardly thrown together to make into a trilogy, along with Money and London Fields. But yes, this was reasonably enjoyable when I was 19 and 20. Even then, I was thinking that it was getting a bit sort of sickly and a little... I don't know, just it's needlessly licentious, and fair enough. With the Rachel Papers and in his early career, you can see why it was that Amis wrote about what he knew, but then never really grew up from that, apart from with Time's Arrow, etc. Again, it's a feeling that I've tried to elaborate on many times on this channel. This was definitely going to be something that I'm going to get to. I haven't read any Amis fiction for a very long time, and he's the person, again, who I have to hold responsible for putting me in front of this camera and making of me a delighted reader. So once close friends, writers Gwyn Barry and Richard Tull now find themselves in fierce competition, while Tull has spiralled into a mire of literary obscurity and belletristic odd jobs. Barry's atrocious attempts at novels have brought him untold success. Prizes, prestige and wealth abound, and from far below, Tull can only watch stewing in torment. So it's a fascinating concept for a novel. It's essentially the difference, I think, between... Well, not really the difference between Trollope and Dickens, but yeah, somebody who writes deliberately to sell and somebody who seems to be writing from the heart and out of some namby-pamby sort of artistic sense. So that's The Information. Next up we have Saul Bellow's Ravelstein. Again, toss a coin as to whether I enjoy a randomly generated Saul Bellow novel or not. Adventures of Augie March, I think fantastic. Herzog, terrible, as I've told on this channel before. Henderson the Rain King, terrible. Samler's Planet, fairly good. What else have I gotten to? The early stuff, Dangling Man, meh. Him with his foot in his mouth, the non-fiction, pretty good. And this I enjoyed as well, but quite why that was, whether this was... I again read this probably about 18 months ago, 2 years ago. So it's been a long time. It's going to be another reread. It is the story of, again, I think it's one overblown academic and another bloke who ramble around New York. This was written when Bellow was, I think, north of 80. He was in his declining years. And because it exhibits a modicum of control and isn't nearly as self-congratulatory and is, it's just, there's a little bit more restraint shown by said author. I think that's why it gets a little bit more credit than it ought to have, plus it's the last thing he ever did, so, people read into all sorts. Abe Ravelstein, ferocious intellectual, best-selling author, confidant of presidents and prime ministers and possessor of tastes that would bankrupt a king, is celebrating his success in Paris. He and his friend Chick trawl the Parisian streets in search of haute couture, fine foods and fresh arguments, but Ravelstein is dying and, in challenging Chick to record his life, he sets in motion their last great debate. A tale of philosophy, love, mortality, vaudeville routines and $4,500 suits ensues as the two old rogues come to scrutinise their very existence. Again, I think it's just going to try and pantheonise hedonism and sort of chin-stroking academic posturing about Nietzsche and the nature of being and how it is that we ought to live our lives and, just the things that dude bros cling to. But yeah, I'm sure I didn't dislike it last time I read it. I'm sure I'll gather something from it. But yeah, that's going to be a must-read for December. Next up, we have Jane Austen's Mansfield Park. Again, this was in another haul just a few weeks ago. I've read the first... I always read the first pages of stuff that I'm going to read just to, set the scene, I guess, which is what is the whole point of the bloody exercise. And again, toss a coin as to whether Jane Austen can effectively open a novel. Emma and Pride and Prejudice open wonderfully and beautifully and invitingly, and you know exactly what is going on, and you don't have to reread anything, and there is no circumlocution or anything bizarre or anything obfuscating, or it's all mesmerising and inviting and entertaining. And she sits you down in her armchair in front of her best fire and sets to. But Sense and Sensibility, and now I've just read the opening of Mansfield Park, I had to read 3 or 4 times to know what on earth was going on, and I shall try and elaborate. There is a hefty introduction into this, but here we are. About 30 years ago, Miss Maria Ward of Huntington, with only £7,000, had the good luck to captivate Sir Thomas Bertram of Mansfield Park in the county of Northampton, and to be thereby raised to the rank of a baronet's lady with all the comforts and consequences of a handsome house and large income. All Huntington explained on the greatness of the match, and her uncle, the lawyer himself, allowed her to be at least £3,000 short of any equitable claim to it. She had 2 sisters to be benefited by her elevation, and such of their acquaintance as thought Miss Ward and Miss Frances quite as handsome as Miss Maria did not scruple to predict their marrying with almost equal advantage. But there certainly are not so many men of large fortune in the world as there are pretty women to deserve them. I'm going to have to go back and do that again, because I still don't know. She's married a rich man, and there are 2 other women involved that might be sisters, but I can't quite remember. Altogether unclear. This same with Sense and Sensibility. It took me 4 or 5 times not to cast that aside after 5 minutes of reading. Thankfully I did, because it's jolly good. But yeah, sometimes she can clearly do it, because I said Pride and Prejudice and Emma are open perfectly well. But sometimes she just, I think, mucks up. But I'm still going to look forward to this, because it's probably the only thing I haven't read of Austen's, or at least the sort of higher up, more popular stuff that Austen wrote. Obviously, she probably wrote 10,000 words a day, and none of us are going to get most of it. But yes, that's that. Mansfield Park. Just 2 more, guys. Hang in there, folks. You can be back with your roast chicken before you know it. We have Anthony Trollope's The Way We Live Now, one of the few standalone novels that Mr. T ever wrote. This was, I think, in his latter years, perhaps. This is a... again, I have no idea. I've read the Wikipedia entry and read some reviews and, read his autobiography in which he discusses it. This is somebody who... Was it when he went to America? I can't remember. So he was disgusted. He went to... He was abroad for a long time and came back, and England was a little bit sort of, again, hedonistic and dandiacal and individualistic and seemingly unable to delay self-gratification, and Trollope was disgusted with this, and I think goes into that in here. I don't think it's nearly as homely as a traditional Trollope novel is. But again, I read the first page and was just... just not bemused, but just utterly gripped, and yeah, really comfortable in his presence. So I can't wait to look at this. The tough-mindedness of the social satire in The Way We Live Now and its air of palpable integrity give this novel a special place in Trollope's literary career. Trollope paints a picture as panoramic as his title promises of the life of 1870s London, the loves of those drawn to and through the city, and the career of Augustus Melmotte, the great financier who crosses it like a blazing comet. Melmotte is one of the Victorian novel's greatest and strangest creations. If I had £1 for every time said character, any randomly selected character was shown to be the finest and most singular example of an enduring Victorian character, then we'd all be millionaires. Melmotte is one of the Victorian novel's greatest and strangest creations, and The Way We Live Now is an achievement undimmed by the passage of time. Trollope's now might, in the 21st century, look like some distant, disenchanted then, but this is still the yesterday which we must understand in order to make proper sense of our today. Again, I think that's a little bit highfalutin and a little bit highbrow, but I'm sure it's a jolly good book. I think it's the longest thing he ever wrote. It's 700-800 pages. This is massive. And then we have our final book, again, much screamed about. All of you ladies and gents in the crowds with your knickers ready to throw at the on-stage performer. This is Fion McCarthy's Life and Legend biography of Byron. Again, a pretty big one. I mean, I wouldn't want to stoop to the level of some of a lesser creator or commentator than me, who would say that Byron is a man who needs no introduction, because he lived such an eccentric and capricious and exciting and adventurous lifestyle. Finds at the age of whatever 10 or 11 that he is the heir to an not an enormous empire, but Newstead Abbey, which gives him an awful lot of money and a big country seat in around Nottinghamshire, I think it is. Goes abroad with his friend Hobhouse, has all sorts of relations with both the fair sex and his own, and writes Childe Harold's Pilgrimage about that, and he becomes an overnight celebrity, an overnight sensation. But his poetry is absolutely stirring and stimulating and beautiful and devastating and humorous and elusive and expansive, long, sprawling, the lot. I'm running out of superlative adjectives. And McCarthy handles it quite well. She ties in, again, it's another reread, but again, a reread from ages and ages ago, so I'm going in nigh on fresh. This is a writer who tries to tie the reputations of, or at least the cultural tendrils, the significance of this gentleman with Napoleon Bonaparte, who was a contemporary, and the poet was an admirer of the dictator, and even wrote a note to Napoleon Bonaparte on his passing. So yeah, that's going to be jolly very interesting. This will be the start, probably to the end of December, to initiate my Byron read along, which I am almost saying in every video now. I am teasing you in more ways than one. So yes, that is my December TBR, folks. Let me just have a quick sip of orange. Once more, that is laced with vodka, as well you may be able to tell. But yeah, I'm not going to rabbit on for much longer. If you've reached this point of the video, thank you ever so much for watching. But yes, I'll be back early next week to finish Shearer's Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. That will be pounced upon today by myself and completed. But yes, other than that, thank you ever so much for watching BookTube, and goodbye.